Good evening. It's a real pleasure to get to talk to you. I haven't gone to many events like this. I've never actually been in this hall, and I certainly haven't been on the stage of this hall. And I was really honored that someone asked me to come, and it's challenging to try to say something that challenges people's assumptions. And over the last couple of weeks, I've been thinking, especially for the last week, ever since Mr. Snowden came forward, I've been thinking a lot about this monologue I did in 2008 called If You See Something, Say Something, which I did in public just around the corner. And that monologue was about a number of things. It was about the growth of the military-industrial complex after World War II and the rise of that American empire, really in the shape that it is now. But a lot of that show was about the creation of the Department of Homeland Security. And in that show, I was performing it all over the place. But by the time I got to New York to do it, it was fall of 2008. And in fact, it was right in the election. And in fact, the election fell right in the middle of the run. Which is fine, because as you can tell from these loose and ambling remarks I'm making now, I'm not so fixated on a singular script, so I was prepared to adapt my work as it went. And one of the things I said in the show, probably ultimately, because when you look back 5 years, you really start to get a sense. Probably the most provocative thing in the show, because a lot of people come who are good liberals. It's New York City, it's the public theater, so whatever, really good liberals who come to see the shows, and they would pay too much money to see a large man tell them things they already fucking know, so it's actually very hard to try to say something that they don't know that you would should poke them with. And so what I found myself saying every night is I've been talking about some of the horrors of the surveillance state and of the rise of everything that's happened after the Patriot Act. And I would take I would basically stop the show cold. And I would just say, and if you sitting out there think that this is going to change after the election in a few weeks, if you think that's going to happen, you're an idiot. And I would say it as coldly as possible. And I would come to a full stop. And it was kind of an amazing feeling in the room, because it felt a little bit like the audience was shitting their pants. In that, not that they were scared, but they were very disquieted, and people would make little noises. You could feel them. There was a roiling discontent, eating some bad Mexican food. The whole audience would kind of some nights they would actually make a noise. You could hear in the silence of that hold. I was hold as long as possible. Be 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3, come on, baby, how far can we fucking go? I'd pull it out as far as I could. And I would then explain briefly the thing that had been sort of the theme of the entire thing, which is that governments, by their nature, do not give up power easily. It's you don't have to know much about Obama at that point to know that Obama was just part of this entire military-industrial complex. The idea that power would be given back was foolishness. But I'm here to say, that I too was a fool, which is not a new thing for me. I've been a fool for a very long time. I imagined that Obama would not give back that power. But I'll tell you honestly, standing here, I would not have imagined in 2008 that he would be the architect of making it so much worse. I did not really understand or imagine that not only would he passively let those policies continue, but they would deepen them and extend them. And I think this is the most important betrayal, that he would entrench them. Because there was sort of this idea, I think, in a lot of people in this country, that we exist in this sort of dichotomy, flipping back and forth between one side and the other, that we have two sides, that then when the sides switch, then anything that has gone too far will be pulled back. I don't think that's true. I think if there are two sides, they are two sides of one coin. And the metal that makes up that coin is the corporatism that is woven around the structure that embeds us in where we live. And I didn't understand that. I didn't understand that he would actually do the things that he's done. I didn't understand that he would go after whistleblowers the way that he has. I didn't understand that he would clamp down. I didn't understand how false his promises about Guantanamo were. I didn't understand that he would do so little and, as we're now discovering, empower so much. Because now there's no even illusion that we'll be flipping back. And you can see that in the coverage this week after Snowden. You can see that the dominant tone, the dominant messaging that's coming out from the mandarins, from the people who are carrying the dominant messaging, is that this is the new normal. That's really the dangerous problem. And it never actually had this messaging before. The messaging is, you gave up those rights a long time ago. You just didn't understand that you did. Now you understand it, and it's fucking over. The conversation was actually over in 2001. You just weren't awake for that, and now it's over. And that's appalling. I can't even imagine how appalling it would be to young people in their fucking 20s who'd be like, I didn't get to fucking vote and my rights were gone before I showed up as an adult and you're telling me they were voted away. And they would say, yes, in fact, we are. We are, in fact, saying that. I didn't understand that. I didn't understand that I would one day believe, and I do believe this, I swear to you, except that it is slightly softer and more lovely on certain social issues. I have begun thinking of Obama as Black Reagan. And given that we've moved so entirely far over, I don't think that's so crazy. If you lie them on top of each other and you look at a lot of the rhetoric, it's not so different. They're both unifiers. They both strive to bring everyone together to a wonderful middle. And though their sides might in theory be different, the landscape has shifted so far to the right that things I never thought were possible are possible now. I've been working on a piece I performed in the spring about Bradley Manning. And it's available for free on the net if you feel like listening to it. It's better than this. It's more composed. And in this piece about Bradley Manning, I spent a lot of time reading about him, talking to people, talking to authors who have written books about him, sort of trying to dig in an effort not to pathologize him, but to actually illuminate him. Because that's the interesting thing about whistleblowers, is that they get pathologized. They don't actually get illuminated as human beings. Because we, and by we I mean the power apparatus, is not fundamentally interested in why they are human beings. They're interested in pathologizing them so they can see them as a disease. They see them as a problem that is impairing the functioning of the apparatus. But I was very interested in what he was like as a person, and he's a fascinating person. There isn't time to get into it here, but I will say this, that studying him led me to study Ellsberg, and Ellsberg was such. You have to understand that when Ellsberg blew the lid off the Pentagon Papers, when that happened, it was a different time. Some of you are older than me, so some of you are like, we know this! I did not actually know this. This all went down, and I was just barely busy getting born. But the fact is that when that happened, one of the reasons that it's so clear to you that Ellsberg was a whistleblower, and there's no debate about what he was, is there was still a vibrant, functioning left in this country then. So when he came out, there were institutions and people who could line up with him. And even if you know that, reading through the story of how those stories came out, it was perilous. He would probably have served 20 years in prison if Nixon's own fucking burglars had not screwed up their burgling of Ellsberg's psychiatrist's office. If they had not screwed that up, like the latest in a long series of screw-ups from the Nixon administration, thank God for their fuck-ups. I shudder to think that they've been competent, what they could have accomplished. They did so much damage when they were incompetent. Like, without that, he probably would have gone to prison for years and years, and things would feel very different. And so looking through that light, seeing where he stands, where the culture and the media, and everyone's very clear that that's a whistleblower. That is someone who, through conscience, felt compelled to speak. Through conscience, because he had seen a report compiled by thousands of people who worked on this report that makes it very clear that the Vietnam War is unwinnable, that the public policies being released are lies, are fucking piles of lies. He's in a direct line with Bradley Manning, who saw videos like the ones that were shown in that wonderful piece of theater. He saw videos like that. He saw not just videos, I think, but also the dialogue, the fact that what we said as we were exterminating civilians, what our people said, how it became a routinized part of business, how we sanitized the information. He saw this and he had to speak. He had to speak. And now we have Snowden, which we also watched a video of. And then you can see this sort of interesting progression, because Ellsberg had to depend on the New York Times. Manning had to depend on WikiLeaks. And Snowden, because of where Snowden sits, he's not in the military. He's a man pulling down hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. He has a comfortable life. He has the power and the privilege to set up the terms of how he will disclose himself. And to his credit, he used them. He's able to speak for himself and align, put his arguments together, and he makes this argument. But in all these cases, the reaction of the culture at large, the reaction of the media, is pathology. What is wrong with these people? Why did they do this? And it's actually interesting because I think, ultimately, it's a condemnation. There's an understanding on some level that each of these people, Ellsberg, the problem isn't like, why did Ellsberg speak out? The real question is, why didn't thousands of other analysts feel compelled to bring any of the statements? The question isn't, why did Bradley Manning do this? The question is, how could there be so many people, even in its own base, working on signal intelligence, who saw these videos, who laughed as civilians were gunned down? Why did not any of them feel the stirring of the idea that they should say anything? And with Snowden, you can see the circle is complete. We're actually in the place we live now, where corporatism is so interwoven with the government. Snowden isn't even a fucking member of the government. He's a contractor. He's a contractor, as so many parts of the apparatus are now. He works at a company surrounded by many other people, all working in a company, among millions of people, all who have security clearance. And all those millions of people who have security clearance, they are the ones who are entitled to know what is going on. We've been talking tonight a lot about how none of us are allowed to know what's going on. That is not true. That would be a better state of affairs, in a sense, if it literally was that no one was allowed to know. The truth is, there's a functioning government inside our government, and that government is made up of people with security clearances. They number in the millions now. And there's more information that's classified now than has ever been in history. It's creating a bubble inside of the larger sphere. In that bubble are the people who matter, the people who will make the decisions. It's where even their servants exist that won't actually get all the information, but they can be trusted enough to do their bidding. And if there's anything that's inspiring in watching all of this, in watching these men, is that they spoke up. Like that is the fact that these systems still rely on human beings. They still rely on human beings to make ethical and moral choices, and people can make a different choice. You know this. You came here. Last night, a journalist, one of the few that I think really deserves that title, Michael Hastings, died in a car accident in Los Angeles. And Michael Hastings did a lot of investigative journalism. He's probably most famous for his Rolling Stone feature that brought down General McChrystal. And I think it's important to bring it up because, I know how he brought him down. I reread that article today. He brought him down through the radical act of reporting what he actually fucking heard people saying around him. He respected every single time he was put off the record. But he simply reported what he heard in the Situation Room, what he heard from McChrystal, what he heard from his aides, and he put all that information together to paint a very accurate map of how McChrystal and the people running the war in Afghanistan truly felt about that war, and the truth was they felt that the war was unwinnable. The truth was that they thought that they were fucked. And the truth was that they felt that their instructions that had been given wouldn't work. And that was so embarrassing and so unprecedented. And the media itself was very clear. Today, Michael Hastings is lauded because he is dead. But as of yesterday, he was still persona non grata with almost everyone in the mainstream press, and he was because he had committed the terrible sin of actually talking about how things actually are. One of the people who wrote about Hastings today, someone who was actually his friend, and not just someone who's like writing something because they fucking heard about it yesterday, said that the thing about Michael that was awesome was that when you went to a bar with him and you drank with him, you didn't get any better stories about anything that was fucking happening because he wrote about it. Like the version you got in the story was the very best version that he fucking had. That's why it was written down. I feel like he sits in this tradition with these people. I feel like there is a problem when we apologize the act of standing up. It says something very deep about what we think human beings are supposed to be. Like whether we are part of a system or whether we are entitled to freedom and respect and a civilized kind of discourse. The entire belief that there are secrets so dark and deep that we can never look at them, that we can never reveal them to each other, that we must create an entire secret court system, which we don't even really comment on anymore because we've approved that a couple of times. How fucked is that? The secret courts? You went back in time to me at 19 years old, drinking too much coffee in college and said, one day there'll be secret courts. I'll be like, we're fucked. I would have been like, I need to get my gun and live in the hills. I mean, even the fact that we say with a straight face that there are secret courts that meet. How do they make their decisions? We're not sure. What conclusions they can do? We don't know. Who's running the secret courts? We're not sure. Like, it's so fucked. It's so fucked. It even creates like sort of a puzzle box of fuckedness. Because we end up spending a lot of our energy trying to decide, like, well, how do they work? And how should they be held accountable? And I wonder how it should work. But the fact is, even if we figured out everything, even if we took that puzzle box apart and identified and labeled every part, and we're like, here's the secret judges, and here's their secret meetings, and here's where they all wear dark hoods and they vote. Even if they told us everything, our end conclusion would be like, this is fucked. Because at its core, me at 19, when I didn't know anything about the world, at the same time I knew everything, you know what it is to be 19, I could have told you then that as soon as the government starts making decisions with secret courts, something is totally fucked. I feel this enormous respect for all of you coming out tonight. And I feel worried too. Because the fact is, my job is subversive in performance, and I don't have anything subversive to tell you about this because this vast subversion has already happened. And I think that's my greatest fear, is that we ourselves here become self-satisfied. Like we listen to all of this and we say to ourselves, oh yeah, it's terrible. And I'm so aware that it's terrible. And then we go home and jerk off and go to sleep. I don't know what we're all going to do. I don't know what you're going to do. I don't even know what I'm going to do. But I'm saying is that whatever system we've used before to transmit the information from each of us to other people has to change. Like each of us knows that it's this fucked. If we really are clear about that, then something is going to have to shift in how we let that out. How we spread it to other people so that the next time there's a congregation in this room, it is truly full. Finally, I just like to. I don't do many events like this, and I don't know what to say except that It was really moving to hear some of the speeches tonight and to see people talking about ideas with such passion when for days now I've been wrestling with people because since I work in the theater, I'm in the middle of that mass. The left, but not the examined left, not the far left, just the sort of moderate left, which is vaguely disquieted but is not yet radicalized. It really does my heart good to hear people who understand that this is serious, that something's happening, that things need to be done. And I hope that you're the people that do it with me and all of us.